Right now, you are forgetting something. You do not know what it is. You cannot feel it slipping away. But somewhere in your brain, a memory is fading, dissolving into noise, gone, before you ever had a chance to notice it was there. That is normal. That is how your brain is supposed to work. But for a small number of people on this planet, that never happens. They wake up on a Tuesday morning and remember, without any effort at all, that on this exact date 14 years ago, it was raining. They had eggs for breakfast. The news anchor wore a red tie. Their mother called at 11:17 in the morning and said something small, something forgettable, but they remember every word. Not because they trained themselves, not because they use memory tricks, just because their brain never learned to forget. This condition has a name. It is called Highly Superior Autobiographical Memory, or HSAM. And the more scientists study it, the more it reveals something deeply unsettling about the rest of us. About why you forget, what forgetting actually does for you, and whether a perfect memory is something you would even want. You probably think of memory like a recording. You experience something, your brain captures it, and later you press play. The stronger the emotion, the clearer the tape. That is the intuitive model. That is also almost entirely wrong. Memory is not a recording, it is a reconstruction. Every time you remember something, your brain is not rewinding a file. It is rebuilding the experience from scattered fragments, filling in the gaps with logic, with expectation, with whatever feels right. You are not remembering what happened, you are remembering the last time you remembered it. This is why eyewitness testimony is notoriously unreliable. This is why your memory of childhood shifts every decade. This is why two people can experience the same event and come away with completely different stories, and both believe they are telling the truth. Your brain does not record, it edits. Now consider what happens when that editing function is turned off. People with HSAM do not reconstruct their memories, they seem to relive them. Ask someone with HSAM what they were doing on March 4th, 11 years ago, and they will pause for a second, and then tell you the day of the week. What they ate, what they wore, what the weather was like, what they were thinking about. Without notes, without prompts, without effort. The first person ever formally diagnosed with HSAM was a woman named Jill Price. In 2000, she wrote a letter to Dr. James McGaw at the University of California, Irvine. She told him that since the age of 14, she had been unable to stop her memories from playing on a continuous loop. She described her mind as a split screen, one half living in the present, the other half constantly cycling through the past. She did not experience it as a gift. She described it as a burden. McGaw was skeptical. Memory researchers are always skeptical of extraordinary claims, so his team tested her. They gave her random dates from her past, dates she could not possibly have prepared for, and asked her to recall specific events. Then they checked her answers against verifiable historical records and against her own diaries, which she had kept obsessively. She was right, almost perfectly every time. McGaw and his colleague Aurora Laporte published the first formal study of HSAM in 2006. By the time they concluded their research, they had identified around 20 people with the condition. Today, that number is still remarkably small. Fewer than 100 confirmed cases exist in the world. So what is actually different in their brains? Neuroimaging studies have found structural differences in several regions. People with HSAM tend to show enlarged caudate nuclei, paired structures deep in the brain associated with habit formation and procedural learning. They also show differences in the uncinate fasciculus, a bundle of nerve fibers that connects the frontal lobe to the medial temporal lobe, the region most associated with autobiographical memory. Something about the wiring between those regions appears to work differently. Memory does not just pass through and fade, it seems to anchor, deeply, permanently, without letting go. But here is where it gets strange. People with HSAM do not have superior memories across the board. Give them a list of random words to memorize and they perform no better than average. Show them a sequence of numbers and they are not faster than you. Their working memory, the short-term scratchpad your brain uses to hold and manipulate information, is completely ordinary. What they remember with extraordinary precision is themselves, their own lives, their own experience, which tells scientists something important about how autobiographical memory works. It is not just another form of regular memory. It operates on its own track, stored differently, processed differently, subject to different rules. And in people with HSAM, something on that specific track does not work, or perhaps works too well, in a way that makes personal experience impossible to release. Now, think about your own memory for a moment. You forget most of your life. That is not a flaw. It is a feature. Your brain is not designed to retain everything. It is designed to retain what matters, what is useful, what predicted danger or reward in the past and might again in the future. The rest gets compressed, simplified, or discarded because holding every sensory detail of every moment would be catastrophically expensive in terms of energy, attention, and cognitive load. Forgetting is your brain curating. It is not losing data. It is filing only what is worth keeping. Psychologist Elizabeth Loftus, who has spent decades studying the malleability of memory, argues that the ability to forget is essential to healthy psychological function. The brain does not want a perfect archive. It wants a useful one. It wants patterns, lessons, emotional signals, not a minute-by-minute replay of everything that has ever happened to you. Consider what it would mean to remember everything with equal vividness. Every embarrassment, every argument, every moment of physical pain, every loss. The good memories and the bad memories do not fade at the same rate in ordinary people. The bad ones blunt faster. The edges soften. That softening is protective. It lets you move forward. People with HSAM often report that the bad memories do not soften. They replay with the same intensity, the same emotional charge as when they first happened. A fight from 12 years ago feels, when it resurfaces, like a fight from yesterday. An old grief does not diminish. It waits fully intact, ready to be experienced again at full force. Jill Price, in her memoir, described her memory not as a superpower, but as a life sentence. She called it exhausting. She called it isolating. She said it made it almost impossible to let go of the past, because the past was never actually past. It was always present, playing just below the surface, ready to flood in. There is a story in memory research about a Russian journalist named Solomon Shereshevsky, studied extensively in the 1920s and 1930s by neuropsychologist Alexander Luria. Shereshevsky appeared to have a virtually unlimited memory. He could repeat back long strings of numbers, nonsense words, and complex formulas years after first hearing them. Luria wrote about him in a book called The Mind of a Mnemonist. But what Luria also documented was the cost. Shereshevsky struggled to abstract. He had difficulty reading faces because every face he encountered reminded him of every other face he had ever seen in all its variations, and he could not settle on a stable impression. He could not hold down a steady career. He found ordinary conversation disorienting. His extraordinary memory made the world harder to navigate, not easier. Perfect recall is not the same as perfect understanding. Your brain generalizes. It takes specific experiences and extracts the lesson, the rule, the pattern, the principle. You touch a hot surface once and you learn hot surfaces hurt. You do not need to remember the exact temperature, the exact location, the exact second it happened. You just learn. That is intelligence. That is what memory is for. When every specific detail survives with equal weight, generalizing becomes harder. The signal gets buried in the noise, so you have all the data and none of the meaning. This is why HSAM research has shifted how neuroscientists think about forgetting. Forgetting is not a failure of the memory system. It is part of the design. The system is not trying to store everything. It is trying to build a model of the world, a working map that updates, simplifies, and discards raw data in favor of useful abstractions. Your memory is not a hard drive. It is a theory, a constantly revised theory about what the world is like and how you fit into it. And right now, today, you probably have a memory that you wish you could forget, something that plays back at the wrong moments, something that still stings. Your brain is working on it. Slowly, without your input, it is softening the edges, compressing the detail, filing it somewhere where it will not intrude as often. That is your brain protecting you. The people who remember everything did not ask for that gift. Most of them would trade it. Because it turns out that the ability to forget, to let the past become the past, is not a weakness in the human memory system. It is the most important thing your memory does for you. You are forgetting something right now, and that is exactly how it should be.